Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From Florence, Riccardo Amati.
Breaking today in the mobile ecosystem, trust in business messaging is under intense scrutiny as reports suggest a significant share of SMS traffic is now perceived as spam or scam, and it actually is many times. At the same time, the route of RCS is being positioned as a turning point for richer, verified messaging. But questions remains about whether it truly restores trust or simply repackages the problem. And looking ahead, AI-generated messaging is rapidly raising new concerns about authenticity, manipulation, and regulation in mobile communications. Welcome to the MEF Podcast series Perspectives on Mobile, where we explore the forces molding the future of mobile communications. I'm your host, Riccardo Amati, and today we're diving into one of the most pressing debates in the industry. Who do you trust in messaging? Joining me is Peter Bell, Vice President of Marketing for EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Twilio, bringing a frontline perspective on how brands, platforms, and users are navigating through trust in a rapidly evolving messaging scenario. Thank you, Peter, for joining.
That's okay, Riccardo. And look, thanks for the opportunity. It's an important topic. And let's get to the discussion. This is good stuff.
We have about 20 minutes, but no guillotine, so we can reach some kind of conclusion, maybe. So we will explore whether trust in messaging is already broken, if RCS can realistically fix it, and how AI might redefine or destabilize communication as we know it. So, first question, bluntly, Peter, has business messaging lost consumer trust?
No, I think the issue is broader than that, actually. I think brands are struggling to maintain trust. There've been dozens, at least in the marketing world, there've been dozens of surveys over the last 8 to 10 years, which say that brands think they're doing a good job and consumers don't think they're doing a good job when it comes to trust. And
Yes.
so I think it's a broader problem. It definitely shows up in business messaging. But this failure to communicate effectively is just a broad problem.
Yeah, let's say if 40%, let's take this figure, of reported SMS is scams, why should users trust any brand message? Because, that's an average, but more or less that's the, that's the scale. About 40% is scams.
Yeah, and I think the difficult part is our identity is intertwined with our phone number. And our phone number is, even if you're not listed in a telephone directory or something old-fashioned like that, you share your phone number whenever you communicate, particularly with SMS, obviously. And that's problematic because, of course, that number gets published and republished, and the scammers will use that to try and defraud you. I think at the heart of this is, how can we trust the person that says who they are? Are they that person? Are they that business? And that's been at the heart of the problem. I think that's been really problematic for brands where they're being impersonated, and people are using their good reputation in order to affect fraud and all those things, which is why I actually think RCS is really exciting. Yes, it brings, rich media functionality. For a marketer like me, the ability to position my product, in a beautiful way with imagery and text, and it's much more visual. That part's exciting, but actually the thing that's really important, and if not as exciting, but certainly important, is the branded sender. So if you're saying you're my bank, I can trust I'm your bank.
Right. Sometimes you see a brand and you say, "Oh, this is I will ignore it." I mean, do you think that maybe there is something wrong in the marketing brands are doing? Um,
Yeah. I think there's two things to trust. If I take trust, I was thinking about this in preparation for this conversation. And if we say trust broken, there's really two things behind this. The first is identity. If I say I'm DHL and I'm going to deliver a parcel, is it really DHL or not? And the second is relevance. And this comes to your question specifically, which is brands quite often, are communicating where they've either lacked context, they've forgotten our previous conversation, they've forgotten who I am, they've forgotten our purchasing preferences, or they're just communicating about things which are irrelevant to me. I mean, simple things like, getting my gender wrong. I mean, quite possibly
sure.
means that products are being marketed to me which are not relevant. Same with age. And those are very simple elements of age and gender. So this lack of relevance, and fundamentally within that, this lack of context that they hold about me, who I am, what I'm interested in, what I'm not interested in, means for you and I, we just equate this to spam. Even if it's authentic and it's come from, a company I purchase from or do business with, if it's not relevant, it's spam.
Mm. That's very much true, I think. Um, there is a big precedent, emails. Is messaging becoming email, high volume, low trust?
It certainly has. Look, I think with that statistic you shared, 40% of it being, of SMS volume being spam, I think there is a real risk. I think, email isn't dead, despite it's. I've been working quite a while, and the death of email has been much predicted and
Yeah, for
prophesized.
decades now. Yeah.
And yet, it's probably one of the preeminent tools we all use every day. By the way, as a slight aside, I've maintained for years that if the sender had to pay like a penny or something to send an email, we'd see way better email. If we just had to
Absolutely.
pause.
Probably a
But
good point for many things, not just emails, right? Yeah.
so if there was just a fractional cost to it, it would. But again, I think the same principles hold, which is it doesn't matter if you're going to phone me up, you're going to email, you're going to message me, then, you know, is this conversation relevant to me? I'll use a consumer example I quite often use in this conversation, which is if I buy a white good, say a fridge or a microwave or a cooker or something, please don't continue to market those, those to me. I hope the thing will last 15 to 20 years.
Absolutely.
Market, maintenance contracts or checkups or other products, but I don't need that fridge 6 weeks after I've just
That's
bought a fridge.
probably, a problem with algorithms as well, in the sense
Yeah,
that they see that you are interested in a microwave oven, and they don't know that you bought one, at least
and
they
I
keep on.
I used the word context earlier, and this is the part that's really important, especially with AI, because of course, AI just scales things up for better or worse. It's important that before communication goes out, did this person complete the purchase? If they did, then they should be suppressed from these types of communications and these offers. It sounds like a really, really simple thing, and yet you and I think our separate but shared experiences are this does not happen often enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you were mentioning RCS, um, being positioned as the future, but what problem does it actually solve? You were mentioning, yeah, I can present to as a marketer, I can present a product much in a much
Yeah.
more interesting way, and that's for sure. That's something that anybody can. But is this about better user experience, or restoring trust via verified standards? I mean, how much is important the typical things that you find in richer messaging, and how much is still important what you were mentioning before, the verified senders aspect.
Look, for me, they go hand in hand. We could fix either one of these problems separately, and I don't think it creates a great consumer experience. But together, I do see them creating a much better user experience. So let's take identity. The fact that I can trust that the person who's claiming to be this brand is indeed this brand is important to me, because I can proceed still with hopefully some caution, but I can basically trust that this is the brand I'm interacting with. And that's a big step forward, because on SMS today you can't, and you touched on this earlier. And I think without this, any new communications channel really wouldn't see much adoption. The second is the ability to present, the rich media. So I can present, as a marketer, carousels, the ability to swipe through imagery left to right, the ability to have text and images side by side. We take this for granted in products like Instagram or on any website. You wouldn't go to a website today and accept, a few characters and a short link, as you just simply wouldn't purchase anything from that
No,
website.
yeah.
So I think it's really important that we bring, SMS into the 21st century, from a merchandising standpoint, but we've also got to address this trust at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, it has a cost. Yeah, richer messaging, and another big question mark. I mean, the debate is typically, is it a pay to trust system? And that regards, many companies as yours, and whoever works on messaging and on the future of messaging, of course.
And look, ultimately, we all pay in our mobile contracts for SMS. It doesn't cost much these days because it's very much a commodity, but we do have to pay for the SMS in the contract. RCS works broadly the same way. Yes, there are some additional costs for the vendor who's doing the sending and infrastructure, but broadly for the consumer, it's the same. It'll be part of my contract, and I think at the moment, where it's early days with RCS, so I think the pricing is still being figured out. Particularly for conversational use cases, I think that's an area where we're still working that through. But for simple business to consumer, I don't see pricing being an adoption challenge. I think old handsets which don't support it, I think they're a bigger challenge than, say, pricing.
Yeah. Again, about what decides which brand is legitimate. RCS still isn't a fully encrypted cross-platform. Doesn't that undermine the trust story?
Kind of, because this debate, I think, has perhaps been blown out proportion. RCS does have in-transit encryption. So while it's traveling over the wire, it is encrypted. Unlike SMS, which is sent in clear text. And people are prepared to send some quite personal things over text, and it has no encryption whatsoever. So RCS, has always had in-transit encryption. Yes, it's not end-to-end, and both Google and Apple are doing work with the messaging layer security, or MLS, which sees end-to-end encryption go into place. And it's important. I think it's more important from a perception basis that, because other, end-to-end encryption, I think, is what consumers broadly understand. They wouldn't really, I don't think, know the difference between that and in transit. So I think it matters as much for perception as reality. But of course, end-to-end is more secure. But I think the fact that it's always had security in transit, I think this topic has perhaps I think the issue has been somewhat overstated.
Anyway, you presented it as an ongoing development. Right.
Yeah.
The other question is, are we scaling it before fixing security completely? Are we doing a step, to, uh, yeah,
I think, well, rollout will take time. I think particularly, you've got to have a certain version of iOS, you've got a certain version of Android. I think they're probably bigger drags on consumer adoption than security itself. The security piece has moved quickly. So I don't I don't see it as a fundamental barrier to adoption. I don't think we're creating undue risks either. The fact that, it is more secure than SMS, I think tells its own story.
right. Another question that came automatically when I was preparing this interview is, do people want rich messages or just fewer messages?
Yes. I think, look, we all want things that are relevant to us. You know, if I'm a car fan, I like to hear things about cars. If I'm not a car fan, I don't want to hear about cars. For me, it's just a utility to get from A to B. And I brands need to hit pause before they
Yeah.
send. They need to think about, is this something which will matter to the recipient? That requires, it's more effort. It requires a confidence that less is more for the brand. And I'll speak for marketers as a marketer. Um, you know, it is easier just to send everyone the same thing. I mean, that's just the horrible truth. And we,
Very inefficient, in my opinion.
yeah,
But
but it doesn't really in the long term, it doesn't drive great outcomes for anybody. So I think this is, we've got to hit pause. We've got to use the technologies becoming available to really understand, okay, I'm sending this to Peter. He has the following interests. He has the following purchase history, and take that context into, here's an appropriate message from him. And I think the tools are finally here. We've had the aspiration for a long time, but I think the tools are finally here to help to enable us to do this.
so if you had to define a line between useful and intrusive,
That's yeah. I've heard I describe this as the creepy line, which is
exactly, that's probably
you
good.
know
I could inject it.
it's sometimes you can overplay your hand when it comes to personalizing something. Particularly if you're in the healthcare sector, you've got to be very, very sensitive to that type of thing. Um, it's it. Here's why I don't believe AI will replace particularly marketers or merchandisers is because this is a very human trait, that judgment. And, do I use this data point in any place? Do I use it with care? Do I use it generally? And that's a very human trait that I think ultimately is why, yes, we'll see AI scale things, but I'm a believer that for really effective communications, you will always have a human in the loop, and there will be these judgment-based decisions that a computer's not going to be able to make.
Hmm. Well, a last question about this let's say segment about user experience versus reality. I mean, a risk could be RCS turns spam into something more polished. Could that be a problem for the future of RCS before going into what AI and manipulation
Yeah.
can produce, just in general, as a system, as a model, RCS, as a canal of messaging.
I think the short answer to your question is yes. We could misuse RCS in the same way that email and SMS have been misused. Overly frequent, irrelevant communication to consumers at scale. There is that risk.
Well,
On this occasion, though, I think the risk is on the brand because of course, we can pretty much guarantee that it is the brand who is sending these communications. No excuses, nowhere to hide. Then it's the brand's reputation is very much at risk.
Sure.
And that, it particularly because, you'll see the brand's logo, you'll see, it'll be very, very clear it's coming from them. And so there's that side of it. I think the other part is it's not often we get a new consumer communications channel. And as marketers, we bear a responsibility to use it intelligently so we don't repeat the mistakes and create the mistrust and we don't want it to become the new spam folder. So we've got to think about how we use it.
So it's about regulation, but at the source, it's about how who produces this new channels. Yeah, how much they are responsible. Mentioning AI, clearly, AI generates messages at scale, so it's more difficult to understand what's real for users, and that's about AI in general, not just about messaging, but just AI in general. But so in the messaging industry, should AI messages be disclosed? Should we? I mean, that doesn't regard just messaging. It's a very, very general kind of regulation question mark. Should it be disclosed? So should it have AI produced on that?
Yes, I believe that we should be transparent where we're using AI, particularly if content or, particularly if content has been created via an AI. Yeah, just for me, that would be a non-negotiable. We need to declare that. Now, that needn't mean it's a bad thing. We have an email-based, not messaging-based, but email-based customer service agent who handles the vast majority of the inquiries we get through our website. And this solved a real business problem. We had more inquiries coming through the website than we had customer service agents to manage them. So they were literally going unanswered, which was creating a business problem for us in terms of customer satisfaction.
I see.
So we turned to technology because we had a business problem, and we've used AI to solve it. Now, this AI-based consumer service agent has an NPS score of 9 out of 10. It speaks 12 languages and is available in over 80 countries. Works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So highly productive and creating good customer satisfaction. Now, the reason it works is because we're not just simply, using this agent and pointing it at the internet and saying, go find the answer out there. First of all, it goes through a set of deterministic rules. And though, deterministic is really important as a first gate, because you want yes, no answers. You don't want it to be probabilistic, which you move on to. And then on the kind of probabilistic solutions that go back, we only allow the agent to handle a number of types of conversation, and those types of conversations have been trained on internal data, which is why we're avoiding hallucination, which is why we're avoiding, for instance, if someone's asking what's the price of something in, say, Portugal, we use the deterministic models to answer that. But if someone's got a more complex query, which is about maybe coding, how to get set up on Twilio, then we will use the probabilistic LLM type technology. Putting these pieces together is how we're getting the results we're getting. We can answer pretty much every inquiry that comes through. If the inquiry falls out any of the parameters I've described, it goes to a human for manual intervention. But we've taken a very thoughtful, cautious approach to this because there was a real risk that we were just, the risk was we made the problem worse. But I think that experience, that first-hand experience, gives me confidence that, with caution, with thought, with experimentation, then AI can make for better outcomes rather than scaling bad outcomes.
On my notes, it was in 3 years, but anyway, in the future, right? Will something kill SMS? And if, in case, would that be regulation Apple or RCS? I mean, or something else.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
maybe it will be very much alive and kicking. What's your take?
My vote is it'll be alive and kicking.
Right.
I don't know it'll be as preeminent in our day-to-day lives, but SMS is still the fallback for RCS. If you're in a low signal area, if you've got low signal, or you've got an older handset, then RCS defaults back to SMS. And that's important. And there are some scenarios where it's just important the message is received. You don't need the fancy, marketing, merchandising functionality. And that could be, give you two simple examples. If you're sending out an emergency alert, perhaps it's an earthquake or some type of broad alert that needs to reach everyone. Or, if you're using two-factor authentication, you're probably going to use SMS for that because it will reach every handset.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think SMS is going to be with us for quite a while.
Yeah, it's going to be probably still part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's all for this episode of Perspective on Mobile. A big thank you to my guest, Peter Bell, Twilio, for sharing his insights on trust messaging and what the future might hold for brands and users alike. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. And it was a good discussion.
Yeah, it was fun. And thank you for listening. If this conversation sparked new questions for you, stay with us for the next episode as we continue unpacking or trying to the forces molding mobile's future. Thank you for listening. I'm Riccardo Amati. Good luck with your work.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.